Hi, and welcome to the ISO show. I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Garman today, who is an adventurer. He's our first adventurer onto the podcast. I'm sure we'll have a few interesting stories to talk about. But he's also CEO of SalesEnabla and an entrepreneur as well. So he's set up and run and sold some businesses in the tech space as well. So he's got a wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to running successful businesses. Now, the purpose for getting Matt on today is to talk about, some of the kind of key ingredients of creating an awesome sales process. So for our ISO show listeners, we all know that we're very process driven. We have to have processes in place in order to be able to comply and meet the requirements of ISO standards. That's a given. And within clause 8 of ISO 9001, which is the operational control section, which is very similar to other ISO standards as well for, environmental, health and safety, information security, this is where an organisation can actually create their own blueprint for their business operations. Now, we all know that businesses need to be able to make a profit. They need to be able to pay salaries, to be able to grow. And so many of our listeners are very much focused on being as productive as possible so that they can maximise turnover and also increase profitability as well. So although we haven't drilled down specifically into a process before in the podcast, this is something that's so important to many organisations. Because one of the questions that we ask at Blackmores is, what are the top 3 things that you'd like to achieve? And one of them quite often is higher turnover and more profits. And I couldn't think of a better person to be able to talk about this process than Matt Garman. So I've actually been working with Matt for a few months now. Now, before I did that, I read his book, Learning the Ropes. And so I'm going to ask Matt to dive into a couple of areas in the book, which I think you'll find interesting. But before we do that, I'd just like to bring Matt in then. Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
Hi, Mel. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi. No, it's a pleasure. I think when you said we're going to come and get you on the podcast, I was thinking, well, I don't really know much about ISO, but I'm sure we can have a conversation about something else. So, no, looking forward to it.
Yeah, great. Now, something that not many people have done is swam the channel, completed Ironman events, which are all things that you've done, plus other crazy things. But you are about to embark on a huge challenge later on this year, aren't you? Which is just amazing. Would you mind just sharing what you're going to be up to later on this year?
Yeah, so we're I've done a few crazy things. Mrs. G's not too happy, but she's allowed me. So I've put together a team. There's myself and two other dads, and we put together a team of 3 dads called Ocean, and the team's called Ocean Dadventure, and we should be rowing in the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge. So we're rowing 3,000 miles from La Gomera near Tenerife to Antigua in the Caribbean. So we've got we worked it out the other day, we've got a combined age of 157 between the 3 of us. And we're just trying to show that it's probably never too late to have a go at something like that.
Brilliant! That's really inspiring. I mean, what on earth kind of possessed you to go for a challenge like this, then, Matt?
I've always, as you've alluded to, I've always challenged, always pushed myself both in business and personally. I'm very fortunate to live down by the coast. And I've been looking for a couple of team members to come along with me for a while. I think there's a few instances before, whenever, I'm sure if you've got listeners who are into some challenges and stuff, sometimes challenges come into your head and somebody says, I'm thinking of doing this, and you mull it over and then it sort of slips away and maybe something else comes along and maybe that sticks. But yeah, this is one that got into my head about 10 years ago, and it's just not gone away. It's just not gone away. And like many people during COVID, I was umming and ahhing. So looking about, what shall I do? All sorts of other bits and pieces in our lives were changing, so signed up. That was 2 years ago now. We signed up, and we're just 6 months away from the race start now.
So how's the training going then? And what's involved with training and preparation for an epic voyage like that?
Lots of rowing, lots and lots of rowing. Sometimes on rowing machines, which is dull. As I say, we're very fortunate that we live by the sea, so we've been doing quite a lot of rowing. A lot of our training's actually on our boat, which is really, really good. I've been introduced to yoga, which I've never taken. That's the one big thing for me. I've never taken my stretching seriously enough, and all the race organisers and all the safety crew have said, look, yes, you need to be strong, yes, you need to be fit, but above all else, you need to be able to move, and you need to be able to concentrate on keeping as flexible as you can, which is not that easy when you're kind of all the other side of 50, and you're kind of having to start learning to stretch and I wonder whether or not I need some WD-40 or something to help me along the way a little bit, or something like loose something like that.
Yeah, because how long do you reckon it's going to take you to complete it then?
We think we can do it in 6 or 7 weeks to get across, and there'll be 3 of us. We'll be rowing 2 hours on and 1 hour off. Probably do that during the daylight hours, and then at night we'll probably just row one person, so for a couple of hours at a time, and we'll get sort of hopefully 4 hours rest. But it's all a journey into the unknown, and one massive adventure.
And you're raising funds as well along the way, aren't you, for a couple of fantastic charities? Could you just explain a little bit more about the charities that you're fundraising for?
Yeah, sure. So we're raising money for Prostate Cancer UK. I lost my dad at the beginning of lockdown to prostate cancer, so trying to get some money for them. And we're also supporting a local charity to us called WOLO Foundation, which stands for We Only Live Once, and they support the families of the cancer sufferers to try and keep some sort of sense of normality and support and guidance, because obviously quite often it's for right reasons. Obviously the sufferer is having to go through all sorts of treatment and stuff like that, and sometimes the families get a little bit left behind, and sometimes even a little bit neglected. So they support the families along the way, and we're really, really excited for them, and we're trying to raise at least £50,000 for each of those charities.
Great. So if our listeners would like to find out a little bit more about the challenge and how they could get involved with some kind of contribution for your fundraising activities, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, any support's greatly appreciated. We have a website which is oceandadventure.com. That's adventure but with a D on the front, so oceandadventure.com, and from that we've got a Just Giving link that takes us straight to the two charities that we work with.
Great. We'll include a link to those websites on the show notes to this podcast. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Matt, and best of luck with the training and obviously with the adventure itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if it's like anything like your other challenges and adventures and how kind of I think strong-willed you are, I think there won't be any problem with completing that at all.
Well, I think
sorry, my little studio is falling apart here. So moving on to the book then, Learning the Ropes. So this is a book that I've referred back to several times, and it's great from the point of view that at the early part of it, it's looking at vision, values, and aligning the corporate strategy with the sales process, which is really, really useful. But what led you to, obviously you've had a successful career in sales and starting running your own business. What made you write the book Learning the Ropes, Matt?
I don't. It's crazy if I speak to somebody about it, because I never actually I never actually thought I'd write a book. I was never a big reader in the past. I've obviously become a lot more studious reading, but I started writing quite a few blog articles and quite a few guides along my journey in terms of sales. But I stumbled into sales in my very early 20s, and I went and worked. If you don't mind me rambling for a couple of minutes to give you a little bit of a backstory, I worked for a life insurance company, and it came, whilst it was commission only, so it was hard nosed sales. It came with 12 weeks worth of training. And I think if maybe your listeners would just, pause for a while, 12 weeks worth of new training for a new recruit who didn't even have a salary. When I speak at some events, I believe there are organisations out there where the salespeople maybe don't have 12 weeks of training in their careers. And they all this training centered around, and their language was, we talk about the playbook. And to me, it was so. I did 12 weeks, and I came away with this ring binder because it was, dare I say it, pre-internet. I know people don't believe that there was a life before the internet, but it was pre-internet, and we had a ring binder, and that was the playbook. And I kind of assumed naively that most organisations had some form of structure and guidance around about how they inducted sales resources and how they expected people to work. Much to my surprise, when I went out and set up the sales consultancy, having run a couple of my own businesses where we were very, very well structured. And I was surprised how few businesses had something documented. So, what started as a load of guides and notes and experiences ended up into some sort of loose format. And a colleague I work with said, "You know what? There's the basis of a book there." And that was the start of it all. So it wasn't, I'm going to write a book. It was a byproduct of a load of thoughts and scribbles and everything else.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you have done it, because there are a lot of businesses out there now that are reaping the benefits of your knowledge and wisdom and applying this within their organisation. And I would actually, I think it's worthwhile stressing that actually a lot of us read books. I read a lot of business books, but unless you actually apply the learning, then there's not much point really. So I think, if you do buy a copy of this book, I'm guessing it's available on Amazon. I think that's where I bought mine from about a year ago. That you take this and use it to make notes and apply it, because it's very much a book that you can read a section and then apply it. It's asking you lots of questions, and it makes you really think about how you're operating your sales team and how that's aligned with your business strategy and where you're looking to go forward. So at the heart of it is the 4 pillars, isn't it, Matt? Do you mind just sharing a bit of an overview on the 4 pillars?
Yeah, so these are from my experiences along the way as much as anything else. I'm not, there's lots and lots of methodologies and frameworks and these sorts of things out there, and I just through my own, some successes and some failures, and I write about those in the book as well. I break things down into sort of 4 pillars, and each of these pillars has kind of got five sort of sections underneath. But the 4 pillars are the vision, people, process, and management. And as I say, there's sort of 5 sections in each one. So there's there's kind of 20 areas that we touch on. But the vision, I don't necessarily mean, we quite often go to CEO events and we're talking about the vision of the business, and that's all well and good. But I think what happens is, we sometimes within the sales function, it's just go and sell. And what I'm referring to engaging, it's supporting the vision. So the vision of the business and translating that into a vision. What does that mean in terms of sales connectivity? What does that mean into how the sales team functions? And is it in line with the aspirations and the overall vision of the business? On a people perspective, I have this belief that unfortunately quite a lot of organisations set salespeople up to fail as opposed to succeed. And what I mean by that is they don't actually induct and onboard people particularly well. So there's quite a few thoughts there in terms of onboarding salespeople and setting them up and giving them access to the tools, supporting them, coaching them, those sorts of things. And then the process, which probably is kind of where we've got the deepest connection in terms of ISO, because I just it horrifies me the amount of organisations I speak to, and they'll bring a salesperson in, or they'll bring new sales talent into the business, and they basically make them sit down. There's poor induction, poor process, and people are left to learn things through osmosis as much as anything else, or just learning through somebody else. And there's no, very, very rarely, much to my surprise with the playbook that we had in the life insurance business, very few organisations actually have a documented playbook around how they want their sales function to operate, the standards that they expect people to adhere to, all the key compelling reasons why somebody wants to buy their products and services. And even things like, all the great stuff, the reasons to buy, how to handle objections. These are and we leave salespeople, dare I say it, quite often we let them wing it, and it's just not good enough. And I'm not an advocate of making salespeople talk like Daleks, and I certainly don't want to clone people, particularly when people have got their own personalities and styles. But I am a believer that there has to be critical standard information in a sales function that everybody in the organisation should work to, and should be able to reinforce how they act when they're talking with customers, whether that's from a new business perspective or from an account management. And then finally, the last pillar is the management, and actually working on the right KPIs, the right activities to get the right results. As one of my companies that I had before, we used to sell CRM software, and so I'm a little bit of a poacher turned gamekeeper, to be honest with you, because there was so many, we'd have so many dashboards and reports and all these sorts of things, and quite often it's actually breaking down to the things that really matter to that particular organisation, from marketing into sales and conversions, and focusing on the right things to look at from a management perspective. So vision, people, process, and management are the four things that I've kind of focused and honed in on as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think having worked with you, I think one of the strengths that you've got is very quickly getting to identify what the issues are potentially in a sales process, and where the bottlenecks are, and then working in collaboration to identify solutions as well. So I know that at Blackmores, for example, one of the biggest bottlenecks was me. Which I know is quite often the case with small organisations that have grown, with the leader doing a lot of the sales because they understand all the products and services, etc. But it does get to a point where actually there are other people that could do that, and just because you can do it doesn't mean to say you should do it. And it's about getting the right team involved, isn't it? And transferring that knowledge, because it's easy for me to keep it all in my head, but unless you actually share that knowledge and experience and expertise with others, then the company isn't going to grow. Otherwise, it's just going to stay with the one person.
No, I mean most of.
So I think
a lot of organisations that I work with are like yourself, Mel. They're founder-led businesses, and sometimes you're spinning so many plates as a founder, and I've been there before. You've got to do all sorts of things within the company, but you're also the visionary or the figurehead when it comes to sales. And we can't clone Mel, but what we can do is we can start extracting information from your brain, start documenting it and distilling it within a playbook, and as you know, so we've got a digital version that you guys use, and it's about making that information consumable by the rest of the team, so that we can start extracting you from having to be involved in every sale along the way. And that's one of the big things. And the other one of the other big things that I quite often see and is that we get into, people, you touched on process. One of the most common areas that I see people breaking down is they look at, they spend too much time sometimes with prospects that aren't ready to buy things. And so I get called in, oh Matt, we're having problems closing deals, or we're having problems, we got a big pipeline and it's all stuck. And to me, it doesn't take very long to realise that in actual fact, and I believe it's the most important part of a sales process, is the discovery. And quite often we're not discovering we're not uncovering the opportunities, qualifying, discovery, call it what you want. We're not doing it with enough rigour. We're not doing it with enough structure. And therefore we put on and salespeople are great at this, by the way, they put on the rose tinted glasses thinking that everyone's their friend and everyone's going to buy from them. But we fail to do a detailed discovery session to really analyse what's a genuine opportunity and what's not. And that's something I see a lot. And again, coming back to founder-led businesses, we carry too much opportunity too far down the line. And we invest quite a lot of effort. Anything that stays in a pipeline for a long period of time is costing money. We think we've got things that we may not have. So a more rigorous discovery session is always one of the things I go looking for relatively early on.
So what's the key things then that an organisation should factor in as part of that discovery? What does a good discovery look like?
I think what we do is we've got stuck in this 80s style of selling where we ask the kind of BANT questions: budget, authority, need, and timescales. And I think we just need to be a lot more sophisticated than that. And we need to ask, what I like to do is we've all anybody who's been involved in sales, we've all had situations where we've asked a question that's not a very well crafted question, and we just get a straight yes or no, and then we're on the back foot again having to ask questions, and it's a very, very uncomfortable one. And we've all been in situations where we've got a prospect or a customer that we're talking to, and we ask some good probing, well crafted questions, and instead of having to think about the next question and the next question, we've asked a question that probably gives maybe 3 answers. And it's stimulating more conversation, and it also makes it feel like a conversation as opposed to an interrogation as well, which is where I feel a lot of sales resources they kind of think that we're I understand we're going through a process, but you don't want to make it feel engaging, and you want to impress the customer to that you're the right person, but we need to do it in an engaging way. So well thought through, well crafted questions that touch on the main things that are of interest to the client, but also allow you to qualify whether or not you've got it's a good bit of business coming up for you or not.
Yeah, so it sounds like discovery is the key really to your success. But obviously that's just one part of the process, isn't it? What are the other kind of key ingredients involved with having an awesome sales process, Matt?
I think I keep going back to I actually go back to skill. I make a distinction between 2 things: skill set and mindset. So and you hear a lot of people these days talking about hire for attitude and train the skills. And I've been thinking about that. I've been working on that premise for quite some time. If somebody's got the right mindset and they're prepared to invest and they're prepared to learn, like you guys at Blackmores, you've done a fantastic job in engaging the rest of the organisation. So the mindset is there that we want to grow, we want to develop, and everything else. And I think once you've got the mindset in the place that you want it to be, and people are committed and engaged in that process, then it's a case of training the skills. And the skill set, I think, is so much easier if you've got your people and the resources aligned and they've got the right mindset to want to improve. But I think if you don't, it's like anything else in life. If your mind's not in the job, you can sit in training or you can do anything you want, but it's not really going to absorb unless you get the combination right.
Yeah, so I think by having a really clear process and providing training on that, but prior to that, obviously making sure that we've got the right attitude, work ethic, and sharing the passion and enthusiasm for the products and services that you're actually selling. You need to understand them inside and out, don't you? What the value proposition is for the person that you're going to be speaking to. What the key benefits are. And so I know that a lot of this information can be transferred into SalesEnabla, which is your product. I know that we're using it. And so although we had a process for business development, we've really expanded on that in that we've got our core process, but there are lots of other tools in the toolkit as well that we now use to develop that skill set, that you were talking about. Could you just share with us a bit more information about, what's inside SalesEnabla and how can businesses use it?
Yeah, so going, kind of encapsulating all the topic of conversation, Mel. Yeah, what I see too often is I see organisations just hoping that salespeople are going to do the right thing, assuming that they're doing the right thing, without actually laying down the foundation, the information, and the resources that is necessary. So what we've done at SalesEnabla is we've invested significantly in building a software as a service product that allows any organisation to basically build the best version of them in terms of a sales function. And it's all prompted so that the user basically builds, along with our prompts and the videos and the guides, basically builds the best version of their sales function. And then obviously that's accessible by all of the sales resources or anyone talking to customers. That's accessible across the whole business, so that everyone's working to the same standards. And that's the important thing. Even basic things like language and terminology. We don't want to confuse ourselves. We don't want to confuse customers. So yeah, it's an online sales playbook that we're taking to the mass market. The plug is it's available at SalesEnabla.com, and that's enabla, BLA at the end. So SalesEnabla.com. So yeah, it's about, for me, it's about digitizing, using modern technology to reinforce and underpin a sales team. And the other massive benefit as well is to onboard, much faster way of onboarding new recruits. So instead of waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 months or whatever to see whether somebody's absorbing information, why not give them a log on to the digital playbook when they accept the job offer letter, because then they're in a much better place to absorb this content before they've started. And what we want to do is we want to reduce that ramp up time of a new sales recruit, because that's that can cost a lot of money, and anything we can do to reduce that ramp up time is valuable.
Yeah. And I know another book that you've written is about why so many salespeople sales hires fail. But what would you say is the main reason why because obviously sometimes there's quite a high churn, isn't there, of salespeople within an organisation? How would you say that could kind of best be avoided?
I think, as I said, I come back and I'll stand by the word. I think a lot of organisations set salespeople up to fail. And I think the more you can document, the more you can structure, the more tools that you can have, the more, and also the visibility of the runway ahead. So what somebody, and it doesn't matter if it's in sales or it's in any walk of life. If somebody wants to come into somewhere, they want to show. You want to be able to show them a pathway to success and development, and exactly the same within the sales environment. So So I believe we and I think we need to professionalize sales, and I think sales needs to professionalize itself as well. And just upskilling, clarity, expectation, and just giving resources time, but also giving them all the necessary equipment, knowledge, and skills to allow them to perform. But also, what it also does is it allows organisations to scale faster as well through consistency of approach, and that's something that's often
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And in fact, all of the things that you've been, talking about, the sales process and having those kind of robust systems in place, I think it's the same across all different functions within organisations. And I think a lot of organisations that haven't actually captured that pathway or that playbook for whether that could be in operations, it could be finance, it could be how to operate a warehouse for goods in, goods out. It's all still relevant, and like you say, having the right people, processes, technology, management in place to be able to scale up the business. And so that's been really helpful. I'm sure that a lot of our ISO show listeners will relate to many of the things that you've spoken about, but also hopefully taken away lots of great hints and tips as well. Okay, that's brilliant. Oh, that's all we've got time for today, Matt. I know that there are many other aspects of the book that I'd like to talk to you about, but unfortunately we've run out of time now. So thank you very much for being a guest on the ISO show. And we'll make sure that the links to SalesEnabla and all the charity stuff that you're doing with the adventure for the Talisker Atlantic Row is all included on our website as well. So you can get access to that at www.blackmoresuk.com. So thanks very much for joining us today, Matt.
You're welcome. No problem at all. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye then.
Great. Well, look forward to catching up with you again on the next episode of the ISO show. Thanks very much for listening.